She didn't leave him. She didn't scream at him. She didn't hand him papers or pack a bag or say the words that marriages end with. She did something far quieter, far more permanent. She stopped talking. Not all at once. Not on a single night that he could point to later and say, that was when it happened. It happened the way a river dries, slowly, from the edges inward, so gradually that by the time you notice the waterline, you can no longer remember what the river sounded like at full flow. By the time Arjun Sharma noticed, the silence had been there for years. He had simply mistaken it for peace. He was 39 years old, a senior accounts manager at a logistics firm in Bandra, Mumbai, and he was, by any visible measure, successful. The flat was paid for. The car was new. His daughter Meera was 9 and sharp and did well in school. His wife Priya managed the household with a quiet, precise competence that he had long since stopped marveling at. The way a man stops marveling at electricity because it is simply always there. He came home each evening, set down his briefcase, ate the dinner she had made, answered emails until 10, and slept. On weekends, he played cricket with colleagues on Saturday mornings and took calls from Singapore on Sunday afternoons. He was not cruel. He was not absent in any way he could have named. He was busy. He was providing. He believed, without ever examining the belief, that this was enough. He was wrong. And somewhere deep inside the flat, in the kitchen, in the silences, in the way Priya moved through the rooms without making much sound, the wrongness had been accumulating for a long time. He would not understand how long until a Thursday evening in February, when he sat across from her at the dinner table and said the thing he had not said in years. He said, "Tell me what you're thinking." She looked up from her plate. Slowly, he said, "Not about dinner, not about Meera's school, about anything. What you actually thought today. What's in your head?" She looked at him for a long moment. Her expression was not cold. It was something more unsettling than cold. It was careful. The expression of a person who has learned to measure the distance between what they feel and what they say. She said, "I don't think you want to know." "I do," he said. And she said, very quietly, "Then why is this the first time you've asked?" He had no answer, and the silence that followed was the loudest thing in the room. They had met in 2012 at a Dadar bookshop. A 4-hour argument about whether Premchand was better read in Hindi or Urdu, a missed train, and a conversation that had felt, to Arjun, like finding a frequency he had been searching for without knowing it. Priya Mehta had opinions about everything. She delivered them with cheerful, unstoppable certainty, and she made him feel as though the world was worth paying attention to. They married 18 months later. In the early years, they talked constantly, on the terrace after dinner, on long drives to Pune, in the dark after the lights went out, her voice low and certain, telling him things she had noticed during the day. A woman on the train reading the same novel 3 times. A child in the building who drew pictures on the pavement and covered them before anyone could see. She collected the world's small strange things and brought them home like seashells. He had loved that about her. He had told her so. Twice, maybe 3 times. Early on. Then the promotion. Then Singapore. Then the school fees and the EMI on the flat and the building committee letters and his mother's knee surgery and the loan that was almost paid but never quite. He had not noticed when the conversation shortened. He had not noticed when they stopped. What he noticed, instead, was that Priya never complained. She was the kind of woman who made difficult things look effortless. He had stopped asking whether they were actually effortless. There was a Tuesday routine she had kept for months, something she had mentioned once, early on, and stopped mentioning because the one time she had brought it up, he had nodded and taken a call. He did not know what it was. He would not know for another 7 years, when a letter arrived, on thick cream paper, addressed not to him but to her, and changed what he understood about everything he thought he had known. But that is later. What mattered now was the Thursday evening, the dinner table, and the question she had turned back on him like a blade. "Why is this the first time you've asked?" He didn't sleep that night. He lay in the dark and did what he had not done in a very long time. He thought about his wife. Not about the logistics of their shared life. Not about Meera's schedule or the weekend's obligations. But about Priya. About the person she was. About what she did during the hours he was not there. He cannot picture it. And that fact arrived in him like cold water. He had shared a flat with this woman for 11 years. He knew her routine. He did not know her days. The next morning he asked her. He said, "What do you actually do on Tuesdays?" She was at the counter, back to him, rinsing a cup. Her hand stilled for just a moment. Then she said, "Errands. The usual." "You've said that before," he said. "What are the errands?" She turned around. She looked at him with an expression he had not seen in a long time, or perhaps had not looked closely enough to see. It was the expression of someone deciding whether to try. She said, "Arjun, why are you asking?" "Because I don't know," he said. "And I should know." She held his gaze for 3, 4, 5 seconds. Then she set the cup down and said, "I'll tell you tonight." She didn't. Not because she was hiding something, but because Mira had a school project due and the building committee sent a letter about the terrace repair, and his Singapore client called at 9:30, and by the time the flat was finally quiet, Priya was asleep. He stood at the bedroom door and looked at her and felt the distance between them as something physical. Not a fight, not a wound, something slower and more persistent, like a room in the flat he had simply stopped going into, until one day he walked past and realized the door had sealed. If you have ever stood at the edge of a silence you helped build, and not known how to walk back across it, stay with this story. Something is already beginning to move. He tried in the weeks that followed. Imperfectly, without the language for what he was attempting. He stood beside her at the kitchen counter in the mornings instead of checking his phone. She said nothing, but shifted slightly to make room for him. That was the whole of it. That was not nothing. He put the Sunday drive to Elephant Island back on the calendar, something she had mentioned the year before that he had said next month to and then forgotten entirely. This time he did not say next month. He said Saturday. They went. Mira ran ahead on the path and Arjun and Priya walked side by side, not speaking much, but in the same place at the same time. Together without agenda. She began, cautiously, to bring things home again. Small observations. A word she had heard on the train. A headline that had made her laugh. A neighbor's dog that had done something peculiar on the staircase. She offered them the way you offer something you're not sure is still wanted. Carefully, watching his face. He listened. Every time. He asked questions. He did not take out his phone. But there was still something between them that had not been named. A room he had not yet found the door to. He knew, by now, that there was something she had never told him. He could feel it the way you feel a word on the edge of memory. Present, just out of reach, significant without being identifiable. He did not know that it was already in the post. The letter arrived on a Wednesday in December, 6 months after the Thursday that had changed things. Not an email, a real letter. Thick cream paper, handwritten address, a Pune postmark. It sat on the counter when Arjun came home. He assumed it was something from Priya's family. He set it aside. Priya opened it after dinner, while he was helping Mira with her homework at the dining table. He did not see her face when she read it. He did not see her sit down. He did not hear the small sound she made. Not quite a breath, not quite a word. Before she folded the letter carefully, set it on the counter, and walked back into the kitchen without saying anything. She did not mention it that night. The next morning, he found it still on the counter. He picked it up. He read it once. Then he sat down and read it again. It was from a woman named Dr. Sunita Ao, director of the Samvad Foundation, a literacy and education organization based in Pune. The letter was formal but not cold. It was the letter of someone who had spent a long time finding the right words. It said, "Dear Mrs. Sharma, I have spent several months trying to locate you. I want to tell you what your Tuesday classes meant. Because I believe, from everything I have learned about you, that you do not know what they became. 7 years earlier, before Mira was born, Priya had spent 8 months at a municipal school near Dharavi every Tuesday morning. Not as an employee, not as part of any official program. She had heard through a neighbor that the school needed reading volunteers. She had shown up. She had kept showing up. She had never told Arjun. Not because it was secret, but because the one time she had mentioned it, early on, he had nodded and taken a call. So she had kept it in the Tuesday-sized space of her day, and said nothing more about it. Among her students had been a girl named Pooja, 9 years old, could not read a single word when they met, struggled with letters as though they were adversaries rather than instruments, had, in the months before Priya arrived, developed the habit of holding books in her lap and staring at them in silence rather than admit she could not open them. Priya had sat beside her, twice a week for 8 months, without drama and without impatience. By the end of those 8 months, Pooja had read a full novel aloud to her class, and laughed, surprised by her own laughter. Dr. Sunita Ao had been a younger teacher at that school. She had watched all of it. She had not forgotten a single morning. Pooja was now 21 years old. She had completed her full education. She was in the final year of a social work degree at a college in Nashik. And she had told her story. The 8 months. The patient woman who came every Tuesday with no salary and no program behind her and no reason except to sit beside a child and refuse to give up, at a fundraising event for the Samvad Foundation. The room had gone very quiet when Pooja spoke. Dr. Rao had stood at the back and listened and understood, for the first time, that some of the most consequential things that happen in a child's life are done by people who never knew they mattered. Someone at the event had tracked down the municipal school records. The records had found Mrs. Priya Sharma of Bandra, Mumbai. The foundation was establishing a reading program in 3 Mumbai schools. Dr. Rao was writing to ask if Mrs. Sharma would consider coming to lead it. Arjun set the letter down. He did not move for a long time. The flat was quiet. Mira was at school. Priya had gone to the market. Outside the window, a kite circled slow and wide above the Bandra rooftops, riding something invisible. He sat with the letter in his hands and felt 11 years rearrange themselves around him. She had gone every Tuesday for 8 months while he had been too busy to ask about her days. She had sat beside a child who could not read and stayed, week after week, until the child could. And she had walked away without telling anyone, and carried it alone inside her for 7 years, in the same way she had carried everything else, quietly, without asking for acknowledgement, without needing the room to know. He thought about the evenings he had come home and said nothing. The Sunday calls from Singapore, the meal she had made and he had eaten without looking at her face. The way he had noticed, last year, that she had seemed somehow smaller, quieter, more contained, and had told himself it was just the season, just tiredness, just the weight of the building committee correspondence. He thought about the Thursday when she had said, "I started saving the interesting things I noticed for myself, because I ran out of places to put them." He had assumed her silence was contentment. It had never been contentment. It had been a woman with a whole interior world, full of things she had noticed and done and been, who had simply stopped believing anyone in this flat wanted to hear it. And still, in the years of silence, she had gone to a school in Dharavi every Tuesday morning and sat beside children who could not read and stayed until they could. Without announcement, without recognition, without once making it anyone else's obligation to care. He thought, she was always this person. I just forgot to look. When Priya came home, she saw the letter on the table. She saw his face. She went still in the doorway, bag in hand, the way a person goes still when they are not sure what has shifted. He said, "Tell me about Pooja." She looked at him, really looked, the way she had looked across a bookshop counter 15 years ago, when she had decided he was worth arguing with for 4 hours. Something in her face moved, not quickly, like a door that has been shut a long time, easing slowly on a hinge that still works. She set down the bag. She sat across from him, and she began to talk. She talked about the school, the smell of chalk and dal from the canteen, the window that stuck in the rainy season, the teacher who shared chai from a dented thermos. She talked about Pooja, the way she had sat on the very edge of her bench, as if she might need to disappear quickly, the way she had held books upside down before she could read them, pressing them to her chest like something she was protecting rather than something she was using. She talked about the morning Pooja had read a full sentence aloud for the first time, and then looked at Priya with an expression that contained no words at all. She talked about the other children, each one specific, each one named. About a boy named Ravi who wrote his letters from right to left and needed 3 weeks to understand why that was different from how the world read them. About a girl named Sonal who had been too shy to speak above a whisper until the day she read a joke aloud from a book and made the whole room laugh. She talked about things she had noticed on the Tuesday bus rides. About an old man who got on at the same stop every week carrying a bag of mangoes that he gave, one at a time, to strangers. About the city in the early morning, before it hardened into its daytime self, when it still looked the way it had when she had first arrived. Arjun listened to all of it. He did not take out his phone. He did not glance at his watch. He did not nod in the distant way that means I am processing this while already moving to the next thing. He listened the way a person listens when they understand, with a specific, irreversible clarity, exactly what they have been missing. Mira came home from school and found them still at the table. She put down her bag, looked between them, and went to sit on the floor near her mother and started drawing, the way children do when they sense something important is happening and want to stay close without interrupting. The chai Priya made at some point went cold. None of them noticed. If you are watching this and you recognize something, a silence you helped build, or one you have been living inside, stay for what comes next. Priya accepted the position at the Sambhav Foundation. She runs 3 reading programs now, at schools in Dharavi, Kerala, and Malad. Tuesday and Thursday mornings. She comes home with a bag full of things she has noticed. A child who writes letters the long way round. A teacher who corrects with unusual patience. A word she heard for the first time on the bus and looked up before she reached her stop. Arjun hears all of it. Every word. He does not take calls during dinner. He asks questions that have no practical answer. On Sunday evenings, they sit on the terrace and she talks and he listens, and sometimes he talks and she listens. And the city noise rises and falls around them the way it always has, but it no longer feels like background. It feels like the context of their actual life. Meera has started telling her mother things the moment she walks in the door. Small urgent things. Something that happened at school. Something she read. Something she needs Priya to know before the day ends. Priya says this is because children learn their worth from whether they are listened to. Arjun says nothing when she says this. He just listens. There are evenings now when he watches his wife. At the counter, at the table, talking with her hands the way she used to. And he feels something that is very close to fear. Not dread. The fear of someone who has understood, narrowly and specifically, how close they came to losing something they did not know they were losing. He thinks about the Tuesday mornings he didn't know about. About Pooja, 21 years old now, in a classroom in Nashik, studying how to help people, telling a room full of strangers about a woman she met when she was 9. A woman who came every week. A woman who never gave up. A woman who asked for nothing and gave Pooja the only thing that was actually necessary, time, and the refusal to stop showing up. He thinks about what it cost Priya to keep that to herself for 7 years. About the fact that she kept it not out of secrecy but out of a learned smallness. The smallness of a person who has offered things and found them unheard often enough that they stop offering. He thinks about the Thursday question. Why is this the first time you've asked? He does not have an answer. He has only the decision to make sure it is not the last time. What is placed quietly, without witness, without applause, without anyone watching, does not stay quiet forever. It grows. In the unseen places, it works. And when the day comes that it surfaces, it carries the full weight of everything it has been, all the years it was invisible, and it arrives not as a reward but as a revelation. Not loud, not sudden, like dawn, unnoticed in its arrival, undeniable once it is there. Arjun Sharma is 40 years old now. He is still a senior accounts manager at the same firm. The flat is still paid for. The car is still new. His daughter is still sharp and doing well in school. But the evenings are different. The quality of the quiet in the flat is different. It is not the quiet of 2 people in the same rooms. It is the quiet of 2 people in the same life. Those are not the same thing. He knows the difference now. He did not know it before. He knows that a marriage is not made of its loudest moments. It is made of Tuesday mornings, of kitchen counters and cold chai and the small, unremarkable decision to ask a question and then stay still enough to hear the answer. It is made of the things a person quietly does when no one is watching, and the things another person finally chooses, after far too long, to see. The people watching this story who recognize something in it, who see, in the silence between Arjun and Priya, a silence from their own lives. They are asking themselves a question right now. Not a dramatic question. A small, honest one. Not, what did I miss? But, what is still here, that I have not yet turned toward? The comments on this story have a habit of filling with people who say they watched it with someone, or alone, and then called someone, or alone, and sat with it for a long time before they could name what it had touched. That is what this kind of story does. It does not explain. It does not point. It simply holds up a light at a particular angle, and lets people see what was always there. There is a question worth leaving in the comments. Not about the story, but about your own life. When was the last time you stopped and truly listened to someone who had stopped expecting you to? This is God's Hand Stories, where every story has a hand behind it you didn't see until the very end.